Launch control in an SF90. Oh my god.
Next to me is the Ferrari SF90, the quickest and most powerful Ferrari ever made. Like a Prius, it's a hybrid, and like your favorite truck, it's all-wheel drive. Except unlike those two vehicles, it's got nearly 1,000 horsepower and can accelerate from 0 to 60 faster than you can actually say the words Toyota Prius. Special thanks to Band Auto Group for making this video possible. Awesome group of people. I got a link in the description below to their website as well as their Instagram. Unfortunately, this specific car isn't for sale, but they've got a heck of a cool inventory. Jokes aside, the SF90 takes performance to a whole nother level for the brand. The name itself represents the 90th anniversary of Scuderia Ferrari, their racing team, hence SF90, and it's an absolute technological masterpiece. If we remember back to 2013, where we had the holy trinity of hypercars, the P1, the Laferrari, as well as the 918, those were all limited hybrid hypercars. This, apparently it's classified as a supercar, even though it's got hypercar levels of performance, and it's not limited to 499 units. It's a series production car. The SF90 starts at $507,000. That's of course if you can actually get one for MSRP without waiting 2 years or paying $250,000 over sticker. But if you think about it, compared to the used LaFerrari market that's sitting above $3 million, you're actually getting a pretty good performance bargain. This car, however, has the Asetto Fiorano package that'll set you back an extra $56,000, but does come with some really cool performance upgrades. For one, it replaces the adaptive suspension with a titanium-sprung multi-matic system. It's also got a carbon fiber spoiler that leads to a total downforce of 860 pounds at 155 miles an hour. It comes with insanely cool carbon fiber wheels. It's also got carbon fiber door inserts. The exhaust is made from Inconel to save weight and sound better. All told, it saves 66 pounds, which is helpful in this car setting the lap record around Ferrari's own test track, Fiorano, beating the LaFerrari by 0.7 of a second. At the heart of the SF90 is a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8 that makes 769 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. You'll notice it's mounted so low to the ground you can't actually see it from that camera angle, and that's never happened before on any review I've ever filmed. In fact, there's so much space on top of the engine that you could almost fit a small human in between the engine and this rear cover here. But regardless, the big reason for that is, one, having a lower center of gravity is better for the car's performance, and it's allowed to be that low because of a new transmission. Used to have a 7-speed unit in most of the cars. Now it's got a new 8-speed dual clutch transmission that is smaller and lighter because it doesn't have a reverse gear. So how do you go reverse in the SF90? Well, the electric motors do that. There's not one electric motor in the SF90, there's not two, there are 3 electric motors in the SF90. One in between the gearbox and the engine, and one on each of the axles at the front wheels. All told, power is 986 horsepower. That is insane. Now, because the SF90 is all-wheel drive, it can launch incredibly well. Now, Ferrari claims it can sprint from 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds, which is already ridiculous. But Road and Track and Car and Driver tested this car to 60 miles an hour in 2 seconds flat, which is mind-bendingly fast. And apparently it can run the quarter mile in 9.5 seconds straight from the factory. So I will be honest, I'm not a massive fan of the front of this car. It's sleek, it's modern and incredibly efficient, but it doesn't look as beautiful to me as some other Ferraris, and doesn't look quite as cool or aggressive as a Pista or an 812 Competizione. That being said, in person, it looks so much better than in photos, and it's very color dependent as well. I'm sure over time, the looks will grow on me a lot more. I feel like Ferrari's designers know what people are gonna like 3 years after the cars come out versus exactly when they hit the ground running, but I definitely prefer the rear of the car. Now, the only other complaint I have about the SF90 is the front trunk. So most Ferraris are rear-wheel drive, meaning there's no drivetrain components in the front, giving you a much larger trunk. In this car, it's pretty much useless. I mean, you can put maybe a backpack and a briefcase, but you're definitely not taking big overnight bags. I know it's kind of nitpicky. This is basically a race car for the road, but sometimes it's nice to have some extra storage space. You do have this really, really cool window though, where you can see some of the hybrid powertrain components. I think that's a neat little fixture. The rear of the SF90 has to be my favorite part of the car. Well, other than the fact that it has almost 1,000 horsepower. It's incredibly aggressive. I love the shape of the massive carbon fiber rear diffuser. It's got a gorgeous split exhaust and this really cool wing. Ferrari calls it a shutoff gurney. So this rear part of the wing is stationary, but the section in the front actually moves up and down. When it's in its upright position, the car is as streamlined as possible because air can actually flow underneath the wing out this way to escape, to reduce drag. But when the flap actually goes downwards, it creates one massive wing, increasing downforce tremendously. Now, before we check out this absolutely stunning interior, I want to show you guys the new Ferrari SF90 key, which looks like no other Ferrari key in the past. It's a radically different design. It's very clear that you're driving a Ferrari. It's rectangular, and it's got a couple buttons on the back in nice leather. I actually quite like it, and there's a perfect little storage spot right here in the middle that you can plop it right into. Now, speaking of the interior, it is absolutely stunning. The choice of materials is gorgeous, the design language is beautiful, and it's got enough technology and screens to make even the geekiest people at CES impressed. I mean, everything has digital displays. For one, it feels almost wrong not having a gigantic analog tachometer with yellow in the background in the center of a Ferrari, but now we have this enormous 16-inch display for the instrument cluster with some of the best graphics I've ever seen on any car, regardless of if it's a high-end luxury car, and particularly for a supercar. It's customizable, it's got a whole bunch of different options, and honestly, it just looks really appealing to look at. But that's not the least of where the screens end. We've got a display on the side here for controlling your mirrors. I've never seen a digital display to control your mirrors on any other car. Now, to the right of the steering wheel is another screen for your climate controls. And to the right of that, what you're used to in an option on an 812 Superfast, for instance, is this passenger display where you can actually see where you are on the navigation and control the navigation, control the music, and also see how fast your driver is going and what gear they're in and what RPM they're at. The craziest part is there's a screen up here on the roof in order to lock and unlock the car. Now, these seats I'm sitting in are absolutely stunning. They're all carbon fiber with this beautiful red leather on top of it. They hold you in place very, very well. Not sure yet how it is after long road trips, but maybe someday we will find that out. The steering wheel itself is perfect in shape. It feels a little bit thinner, the wheel itself, which I actually really, really like. And there are screens galore on the wheel. The biggest difference is there's no start-stop button like you're used to on a Ferrari. Instead, it's actually this little touch button here that you click on the bottom of the wheel. We still got a Manatino dial that has a hard controller, but the actual individual little buttons here are digital. And then to the left, we've got 4 different driving modes that I'll talk about when we're out on the road, but those can be activated by pressing on the display here. We have a whole bunch of other controls on the steering wheel as well. But you guys want to see, as well as myself, what this thing is actually like to drive out on the road. So let's go. All right, guys, we are behind the wheel now of the SF90. And before I go over its absolutely ballistic performance, I want to talk about the driving modes, because this car has a pretty unique mode whereby it drives in completely all-electric mode and is completely silent. So the modes are activated via this touch controller on the left side of the steering wheel, and we've got 4 of them. I'm in hybrid mode right now, which is for maximum efficiency. So sometimes the internal combustion engine turns on, other times it drives in full electric mode, but the main purpose of it is to get as good a fuel economy as possible. I don't know quite why you would want that mode in an SF90. I don't think I would ever actually use it, but it is there. Now, the next mode is performance mode. Performance mode keeps the internal combustion engine on at all times, but it prioritizes recharging the battery. I'll talk more about the battery in a bit. Then we have the best mode, which is called qualify mode, that gives you the full beans, full power in terms of electric and the internal combustion engine. But let's go right now into ED mode, which does not stand for what you think it means. It stands for electric drive. So right now, the car is actually the first ever front-wheel drive Ferrari. Just the 2 motors in the front are propelling it. It can travel up to 15 miles on an electric charge, which doesn't sound like a ton, but to be honest, if you're just doing short little trips to the grocery store or to make it to a gas station if you're running low on gas, or you want to escape your neighborhood without causing a ruckus early in the morning. It is kind of nice, and if you put it into one of the other modes, you can of course recharge that battery, so you don't necessarily have to actually plug it into your wall.
Please, can you better explain your request?
Well, the Ferrari was confused by my review, so I can't explain my request any better than that, unfortunately. Now it's time for the fun part. Going to put it into qualify mode. Now it's got one of the coolest features on the interior, to be honest, is this shifter down here. Instead of traditionally with Ferraris, you're used to 3 different buttons, one for power start, one for auto, one for reverse. Now you've got what looks to be like a representation of old gated manual Ferraris. And I think it looks really nice. And when you put it into manual mode or reverse, you've got this really cool little illumination that happens with an LED that's really, really satisfying. Unfortunately, there's a little bit more traffic than I would like on this road, so let's talk about the gearbox. It's got an 8-speed gearbox that has 35% more performance in terms of the clutches compared to the 7-speed gearbox, which means it can hold a lot more torque in between gears. It also shifts faster. Apparently the clutch fill time for a Pista is 300 milliseconds. This does it in 200 milliseconds. Driving a Ferrari Pista, I've never thought, you know, hey, I really need a faster gearbox, but they have done that with the SF90. But the biggest difference you notice is the power is instantaneous. Because electric motors activate instantly, have full torque at 0 RPMs, there is no lag in this car whatsoever. The second you floor it, it absolutely tears your face off. In fact, the first time I ever floored this car, I literally dropped a really loud F-bomb, and I was not trying to swear whatsoever.
Launch control in an SF90.
Oh my god. All right, so when you're accelerating in the SF90, it's actually so intense that it takes your breath away. Like it sucks your chest in a way that's almost no other car is capable. Now, we do have some absolutely heavy hitters as of recent with the Rimac Nevera and the Plaid Model S, as well as the 765 LT. But this car is kind of an epic combination of all of those vehicles in a strange way. It's got the electric power system, which honestly adds to the performance. It's no longer this, oh, let's make a green car that's good for the environment. The electric powertrain is actually making it more capable than it would be as just an internal combustion engine, but it still has that V8 in the back. And no, it doesn't sound as good as a 458 Speciale or some of its V12 supercars, but it still does sound pretty darn good. So you're not losing all of that drama. But the second you floor this car, it actually takes your breath away. It's almost hard to focus. You go into this warp speed tunnel vision. The steering is very, very sensitive. It's actually more responsive than I was anticipating. The chassis is really rigid as well. It uses more carbon fiber and 7000 series aluminum. It's apparently 40% more torsionally rigid than previous generation cars, which is actually ridiculous how they keep improving by leaps and bounds over cars that are already brilliant. But honestly, I mean, I think you could just floor this car all day long and have the time of your life. The acceleration is actually out of this world. And with the lack of turbo lag, with the addition of those electric motors, it's really, really impressive. It almost feels like the acceleration of a fully electric car. It's just relentless and all at once, but you get the added soundtrack of the engine in the back. I will say, because it is so low down, when you look out the rear view mirror, you're used to be able to seeing at least the reflection of the engine on the top of the engine bay cover in a Ferrari. This, you can't see anything. It's just kind of a black pit. The seats are not the most comfortable, but they definitely hold you in place, and they look so damn good that I don't really care. They're not the most comfortable, and I'm liking this display in front of me more and more. The graphics are incredible. It's got all the information you could ever want and way more than that as well. Now, speaking of technology, it's got some cool advancements in terms of its side slip control. So Ferrari has had this side slip control that's basically allows you to drift like a champion without actually being super skilled. So it's modulating the brakes and using torque vectoring to allow you to oversteer in a controlled manner and not crash the vehicle. This car takes it a step farther with electronic side slip control. And part of that is this brake-by-wire system, whereby the torque is split from the brake. So when you apply the brake, part of it is sent to the hydraulic unit, conventional brakes, to slow it down, and part of that torque is sent to the electric motors to slow the car down. Apparently in a lot of settings, it's actually just using the electric motors to slow the car down. Now, it's not as intense of a brake regeneration as you'd feel in a Tesla, but you are getting that added regen so that it charges the battery back up. Now, I've been in qualifying mode for a while, and it says it's only supposed to last 15 miles on electric mode. It hasn't lost any electricity whatsoever. Battery is still 100%, but we have dropped some gas, so that's pretty impressive. Now, how often would you actually use the all-electric mode? I don't know, it's such a unique experience driving in a completely silent Ferrari. I kind of like it. And the dash turns to this cool kind of futuristic blue dial. It's definitely not the fastest car in the world when you're in all-electric mode, but it's actually not that slow either. Apparently you can go about 80, 85 miles an hour in all-electric mode. It makes kind of a cool space-age noise. All right, back to the fun mode. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect with this car. Given the fact that it's a hybrid and it's all-wheel drive, it seems kind of like such a change for Ferrari, and the interior is totally different. We've got a plethora of electronics, which Ferrari traditionally isn't known for mastering their electronics, but in this case, everything works so well. The all-wheel drive powertrain allows it to launch incredibly well. If you're at 30 miles an hour, a normal 1000 horsepower rear-wheel drive car, you gotta make sure that that road is at a flat, there's no angle, make sure there's not a little pebble on the left side of the road, and the moon isn't going the wrong direction, and a slight gust of wind. With this, I mean, you can pretty much floor it in any scenario. So the fact that a 986 horsepower car has usable power is pretty ridiculous. That being said, when you are driving it in the canyons, this car takes definitely some getting used to. It pulls so hard in between the corners that you really have to pay attention to what you're doing. But overall, I love this thing. I mean, the visibility is pretty great in it. It's relatively easy to drive when you're just in hybrid mode or all electric mode. And it is so fast, it's actually mind-bending. So with that, we'll end with an epic acceleration. Once again, special thanks to Band Auto Group for making this possible. I got a link in the description below to their website. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Like always, please browse the channel and subscribe. Let's floor this SF90. All right, here we go, guys. How can you not love that?